This presentation was recorded at MVCConf. For more content like this, go to www.mvcconf.com. JetBrains, the leading vendor of professional development tools, now offers a range of new products for .NET developers. In addition to ReSharper, the top-class productivity extension for Visual Studio, you can now use .cover to run coverage analysis for your applications, .trace to find performance bottlenecks, and use TeamCity and UTrack for a perfect combination of continuous integration and issue tracking software. Go to www.jetbrains.com for more information.
Welcome back, everybody, and thank you for joining me on my behavior-driven development session. So my name is Amir Barilko, and this session is not only about behavior-driven development that we're going to talk in a bit and actually define it, what actually that means for us or will mean for us in this session, but it's about producing quality code. And that's why I call the session quality-driven, ASP.NET MVC. And we use the behavior-driven development concept to do that. So first of all, let's have a bit of introduction of who am I. I work as a consultant, as an architect, developer, mentoring other developers. I like to cook at home, and usually get great reviews. And I'm the one who's going to entertain you, and hopefully that will make you avoid just getting too sleepy after lunch. So let's talk a bit about behavior-driven development. Usually, traditional projects, they fail because they deliver late or they deliver over budget. They're delivering the wrong thing. The client expectations, they're not met. So when they see what the actual project does, they get disappointed. The project once it's delivered is unstable, so you have frequent issues and frequent bugs that makes the project to go on and off all the time. And also the problem is that it's very costly to maintain. We have to put lots of resources and lots of effort into maintaining the project once it's in production. So what are actually the principles of BDD? Behavior-driven development is the idea about implementing our application by describing its behavior from the perspective of the stakeholders. So our whole approach is going to record the stakeholders' perspective and try to put that in a format that will help us to develop our application. We don't want just to document requirements, that's not the goal, but to be able to make a runnable implementation of what the user wants and how we can actually code it. So we'll always be on the same page with the stakeholder. So our first rule is that enough is enough. And I don't know if you're familiar with the RSpec book. It's a book that I'm going to talk about it a bit later and show you, and this is the rules, that the principles that you find there too. Enough is enough means that we do enough upfront planning, analysis, and design. We have to make sure that every effort that we put into our project and into gathering requirements is going to be a good trade-off from what we get. So we're trying to be agile, and we're trying to respect our stakeholder engagement and keep him interested, but we have to make sure that we do all that is necessary to do so. And we don't have to go further into documentation, into getting requirements, if we actually not producing quality and not getting our stakeholder happy. Our second principle is about delivering value. We have to make sure that every time we release and every time our stakeholders, they review our new release, that we're delivering value for them. They have to see that the value of the application gets increased in every iteration. And BDD is going to help us to make sure that that happens. It's all behavior. That's our third principle. For us, all what we're going to model, it's behavioral. It's about how the application behaves. It's about how our classes behave and how that connects to each other. And we'll make sure that we can describe behavior at any level of granularity in our project. So if you guys have any questions, feel free to interrupt me, to raise the flag, and I'll try to address some of them maybe if they're short while we're doing the session. What we're going to see today is what is called the outside-in approach, and this is an image that I borrowed from the RSpec book 2. I just replaced the tools with .NET Flavor. The outside-in approach is here reflected, as you can see, in two circles. The outside circle, that is what we call the BDD circle, and the inside circle, that we're going to call the test-driven development circle, the TDD circle. And they both are similar. If you look at both of them, you can see that both of them, they have the red, green, and refactor cycle. So we're starting from the outside to write a specification of what we want. And we're going to start at the same point that we start with that unit test, with a failing scenario. We say, this is what we expect our application to do. And of course, because it's not implemented, that scenario should fail. Once we decide to implement this scenario, we'll follow the arrow to the inner circle. And that's where our test-driven development starts, because we want to make our specification pass. So we have one scenario, and we say it's failing now, so I'll start my TDD cycle. The TDD cycle is going to repeat this idea of red-green refactor, and we're going to keep iterating until we manage to make that scenario pass. Once that's done, and we can see here in number 5, then we say, okay, the scenario is passing, so we go back to the outer circle, and we have a green again. Our next step is to refactor. Maybe there's some steps that can be improved, and the cycle starts again. So just to repeat the idea, and we're going to see an example in just a few minutes, we're going to start from the outside of the application by defining what we want, what we expect to see, and we're going to move back and forth to the inner circle to apply TDD, to code our classes, and go back to make sure that all our scenarios pass. What we're going to use to write our specification is a domain-specific language called Gherkin. And what you can see in the picture right there is the Gherkin building in London. And Gherkin, that is some kind of cucumber, is a business-readable DSL. It helps you to flesh out requirements. We're going to see in a bit the rules to write in this DSL. It helps us to document, because once the requirements are written in Gherkin, they're almost like plain English. It's very readable English, so we don't need to document additionally to show what the requirements are. it helps us to automate our testing because these scenarios, they're going to be runnable. So we're able to run them and see what's the result. Sorry. This DSL is implemented by Cucumber, and I guess that's why they call it Cucumber. SpecFlow, that's what we're going to use for .NET. Cucumber is for the Ruby and Rails world. And for example, JBehave implements that in the Java world. So we're going to see now a demo that I prepared. And what I'm going to show you is a feature that I have already written. This demo is about a media library that I created. A media library, as you may suspect, is a class that allows you to store your media. In this case, we're storing just movies. So the solution that I have right now, I have two features. The browse feature, so the feature that describes that we can browse elements in the library, and the add movie feature that is still not implemented, and we're going to implement together to see how the whole BDD process can be applied to ASP.NET MVC. So let's review together the rules that we need to respect to write directing specification. In this case, the tool we're using is called SpecFlow. That is open source and you can download for free. The rules are, we need to write a feature, and the keyword is feature, and then the rest is free text. We describe our feature with free text, and then we start describing our scenarios. The scenarios are the components of the feature, because a feature may have more than one scenario possible. In this case, I have two scenarios. One is called browse available movies, and one is called browse empty library. Another keyword is scenario, and then we can use just free text. Then we have three more keywords: given, when, and then. These three keywords are specifically to define what we want in the scenario. They don't have a particular order. It's just that when we read it, we always prefer to read as given a condition. When I apply a particular action, then I should see some results. And this is very similar to the arrange, act, assert way of writing tests. We do a setup, we run what we want to see, and then we check results. So in this case, I have two scenarios, and what you see here is a given condition that says, given that I have the following movies, and in this case, because I like Mel Brooks, so I used a few movies from him. So given that I have this list of movies, and when you see here, it's called a table in SpecFlow, and also in Cucumber, is they all use the same ideas. And given I have these titles, when I go to movies, and when I say when I go, I say when I'm browsing, right? I'm going to the movies URL on my side, then I should see in the listing the same movies. And that's my scenario for browsing. So let's talk just a bit about why browse is my first feature, why I didn't put add as a first feature. And this is the great thing about using Cucumber as a DSL to drive you through the process. the first thing that came to my mind is that when I was writing this was saying, okay, I have a media library that I want to create, so I like to see all the movies that I have in them when I go just to the home page. So that's the scenario I wrote. I didn't care about if ad is implemented or what else should be implemented. I just defined what I expect to see. And we can manipulate with our code the database in order for this to happen. So I'm going to show you briefly the structure of the project just to give you an idea of what is implemented so far. So when you see my solution, and by the way, I'll give you the link, it's all the sources on GitHub, so you can download it and play with it all you want. When you see the solution, you'll see that there's a features folder with all the features that they're part of our site. I have a test folder with all my unit tests, and then I have another 4 projects. The main project that contains all the interfaces for my media library. For example, we have iMovie. That's an interface that inherits for iMedia Element. Then I have my core project that so far has only one implementation. That's the concrete implementation of the interface for movie. You have to tell me, guys, if I'm going too fast or too slow. I don't think there's a flag for too boring, but I'll find it on Twitter, I guess. So here's the implementation of movie. And then I have a storage that in this case is implemented by NHibernate. And finally, I have my ASP.NET MVC application. You see the controllers and the views. And for this project, I'm using the NHAML view engine that we're going also to see in a bit. So let's talk about how we implement this feature. Each feature has a collection of scenarios, and each scenario has a collection of steps. So what SpecFlow does is to convert all your scenarios to unit tests, to NUnit tests. And from that code, if you look at the at each feature, you have a generated NUnit file. If you open it, you'll see that it's all about all the NUnit classes in order to run the scenarios. What you need to know is that when we want to implement a particular step, we'll have to write the step in the binding. So what this step does is actually to match the feature using a regular expression. And we're going to do this all together in just a bit. I just want to give you an overview of how SpecFlow works. So matching the steps, we have the control of the code. And SpecFlow is going to use the regular expression in that text in order to match it. So to illustrate how we can do that, I have already the Browse Movie feature implemented. So I'm going to run it to show you how the browse works. What this feature is going to do, and you have to bear with me because I have to switch computers. This one is not as fast as my other computer. So what we're going to see in a bit is how this feature will launch the browser in order to test and to run what we actually said. Remember that the feature says that when I have a list of movies, then I should see that. Remember, when I have these available movies, then I should see that in the listing. And that's why my steps have implemented. I'm going to just show you how the browser is running automatically and that the test passed. So what just happened is that, for example, this given step, if we look for it in our tests, sorry that the screen is not that big, but we can see that for this test, we can see that given I have the following movies, right, we can see here all the output, how this is being inserted into the database, and how are we checking that. So when we go to this step, library steps, add movies, we can see what are we doing. This step, the only thing it does is just grabs each movie in the table and will store that into the database. And then the site will just, the controller will load that from the database. So for each step that we have, we will have steps that they run before our scenario, right? All the given, those are the conditions that we have to set up for the scenario to run, and usually they probably will involve setting up the database, but we'll manipulate the database in order to prepare all that, and every time a scenario runs again, all the database will be cleaned up for us. So basically, that's how the step works, and we're going to do now another feature. We're going to implement the Add Movie feature. I expect to do this in another around 45 minutes, so we'll have 10 minutes to answer questions if there is any questions to answer. So the first thing that we have to do in this case is to write a scenario, and I already did to save some time. And what you can see in here is that I have a new feature that I call addition, and I say in order to make my library grow, because that's what I want to do, and I'm a registered user, I want to add movies to the library. That's free text, and now we go to the scenario. The scenario of adding a movie says, given I'm on the home page, when I follow the Add Media link, I would like to enter Young Frankenstein in the title. I click Submit, and I should see Young Frankenstein in the list, because when I add a movie, I should go back to the index page. So the first thing we have to do is to run the scenario, and we're going to see how this idea drives us towards writing the right thing. So we're running our scenario, and we're going to see which steps are implemented and which steps are pending. And for each of these scenarios, we're going to see again the browser running, appearing, and we're going to see the result. Because I wanted to use an example, and the example has quite a few parts, I prefer to not to go into detail how we use Watin or how we use NHibernate or NHaml, and I prefer to leave that to you guys. And if you have any questions, just let me know. So the browser appeared briefly, and what we can see here is that this scenario, given I'm on the home page, is implemented, because once you implement all the link to and going to scenarios, you can reuse steps. You can reuse that again and again, because every scenario that you have will will use that idea that you're going to a particular page or that you're linking to a particular link. So now what happened is that we follow the link and media, and that didn't produce anything. But it doesn't matter, because we have a pending scenario. We haven't actually made the test fail yet, and that's what we're trying to do. We write first a failing test, and then we'll fix it. So here it says, no matching step was found, so suggesting us what to do. So this is what I'm going to do. I'm going to copy this text, and I'm going to go to movie step class that I created before, and I'm going to paste that here. Let me just move away the Solution Explorer. So I have my movie step says that I have to implement when I enter a particular title in the title field. So I'm going to do, because I want to use any title, I'm going to use a regular expression. And I'm going to call that method enter title. And now the question is, what should we do here? So let's review what we want to do. What we want to do is to go to the create action of movies, right? We want to go and create a movie, and then find the page that, we want to find, in that page, we want to find the input that has the title. And then I want to type in that field the title I want, and then create a submit. So the question is, how I'm going to do that? Well, we're using Watin to find actually the page and to find a particular field. What I'm trying to avoid in here, what I would like to avoid, is to have a high coupling to how the page is rendered. So I'm going to introduce another class that is called add movie page. And I'm going to, I thought I already did that. And I'm going to create a property that stores that. So why I'm doing this? I'm doing this because I want to abstract my steps from how the page is created. If you have more steps that want to reuse the same page, you don't want to put in every single step you have what's the name of the link or what's the name of the title, and sometimes you may use CSS selectors for that. So we're trying to avoid having that dependency, and I'm going to use this page, and I'm going to say that this page.title should be the title that I'm passing here in the parameter. this parameter matches the regular expression that we're putting. Otherwise, we'll get an error from SpecFlow saying that you declared a regular expression and there's no parameter to match. So title, it's failing because it doesn't exist yet, so we're going to create a property called title. So I had my add movie page already created, and now we need to find the title in a page. So how are we going to do that? I'm going to use Wattn that I already have set up, and that's my browser instance, and I'm going to say, give me the text field called title. And once I have the text field, I'm going to return the value. And if this is plain Wattn manipulation, browser is an instance here. When we get the instance, you see that it's returning an instance of IE, that's the wording class that represents the browser. So title will return the title, and we have to do the same idea to set the text field. So we have that, and we enter the title. So let's run once again. Let's run once again to see what should we do next. So we have this, and while we're running, let's think about what should happen. We already defined that I like to follow the add movie link, and I like to add a new title. So what should happen now is that the browser that we are using will be launched and try to find the title and put the title value in there. So while the test is running, let's think, at least I can see your hands, that think, guys, who says that this is going to work? And if it don't, why it's not going to work? So now we're seeing the browser, we're trying to go to create, and that didn't happen. So now Wattn is waiting a bit because he's using a timeout for Ajax interaction, so the field may not be there yet. So what's going to happen is that we're trying to get a title field, and the title field is not there. So our test is going to fail, and that's exactly what we wanted. Look what happened. It says, I could not find an input, text or password, or text area called title. And that's exactly what we wanted. We wanted a red. So we're doing good. This is exactly how we should start, because now we have a failing test. We wrote our specification, we wrote our steps, and now that we have our red, we can jump into the TDD cycle to fix that. So as you all know, the problem right now is that my controller does not have a create action. So the first thing I'm going to do, I'm going to leave the Solution Explorer open for a bit, and because we're doing TDD together, the first thing that we have to do is to write a test for it. So I just cheated a bit, and I already have my test written because I want to save some time and try to get the rest of the application running in the 15 minutes or so left that we have. So as you see, this test, and this is a bit of a syntax sugar that I put on top of MBUnit and structure map auto-mocking container to help me write specifications, and because I like RSpec, I try to reflect that idea that I have a given and a when and a then. So you'll see that that's part of all the tests. So now what I'm doing is saying that when I run here my system under test, my sub is the movies controller. When I run create, then the actual result should actually be the view associated to create. So that's the view that you show the form to create. That's the standard when you are using RESTful methods. And here I'm using the MVC contrib test helper to do the assertion. As you all can see, create cannot be resolved because we haven't written that yet. So let's implement that. And what we should do here is, for example, return the view, because that's the only thing we want to do. I'm skipping a bit the TDD iteration because I know we don't have time, and I hope that you all believe me that we could have done it returning first the simplest option, that's, for example, returning null, and then making the test fail, and then moving ahead. I just want to accelerate a bit because we don't have much time. So we have my action in place, and we have our test in place, and if we build, we succeed, and now we can run this test and see what's going to happen. So we're saying, when I run the create action in the controller, then I should get the view. So let me just close this. The problem with this test is that we're missing still something. That what we didn't do is actually to create any views. So I'm going to go to views and create a create.haml, and for you that are not familiar with Haml is a tool used in the Rails world, and I'm using here nHaml. And the idea of Haml is an abstraction over HTML. So instead of using tags, start and end tag, we're using indentation to show what we want. So percentage is how we add tags. So we're going to create an H2 tag. Add a movie to the library, and then I'm going to add a form. So I'm going to say that using the begin form helper, I'm going to do three things. I'm using indentation, so now Haml knows that it has to open an H2 tag, and what I'm indenting is what is going to go inside. I really like Haml, and I think it's a great tool to accelerate writing pages. And it's much clearer when you open a HAML page and see what's inside to understand it. So we have a label, a text box, and then I'm going to add a submit button. Great. So we have our page, right? And let's rebuild. So we rebuild the web application, and let's run again and see what happens. And when you download the code, you'll see that I have a command line script that you can use. I'm using Rake to on top of MSDill to manage all the tasks. There's a README file that you can follow, and there's an introduction on my blog that explains how I set up the project and how I wrote the first feature. You can use that if you prefer command line to run the test or to run the features and see the results. Sometimes I like that more, sometimes I prefer to use the IDE. So we're running short of time. Here's, we're going to see, we got the page, and now I hope you kind of glimpse that the field was there. So as you realize so far, since we started, we haven't run the application once. And I'm intent to do that, to keep it like that until the end, because I think that every time we launch the debugger, that's just a waste of time, because that time will never come back to us. So we have to, I think, apply our brain as much as possible to understand what's the problem and write tests that will simulate and reproduce the problem. So every time we'll have that problem again, we can rerun those tests and we can show that the problem is fixed. If we do that with the debugger, that will never happen. So we have the create option, and we have our test for this. So let's see what the result was. This step was fine. Now I need a new step, the submit step. So I'm going to copy. As you can see, I'm not planning all this. I'm just letting the tool to drive how we're going to implement the application. So I'm going to go to the movie steps and add my new step. So I have my new method called submit movie, and I'm going to use the same idea that I have my page, and I'm going to add a method called submit. So what should we do here? Well, we should do similar action that we did with the text field. I'm going to say the browser that instance, I want to find a button called submit, and as you will guess, probably do a click. That's what I want. So I'm going to skip running the test again. We're going to submit, but nothing is going to happen because we haven't created anything yet that can handle that. And what we need to do is to do the post for that form. So in order to do that, I have another test that I want to include that I already wrote, that it says when I call create with a title, and that doesn't exist. So I'm going to create an overload for create. Yeah, that's maybe a purchase of wording, but and what I have to make sure is that this is going to be a post. So I'm going to use the accept verbs and use HTTP verbs post. If you would have run the example, you would have found that on your own. I'm just accelerating a bit to tell you the end of the story, so at least you get the whole application when the session is finished, and you can take that and apply it to your own project. So what we're going to use here is the library that I already have created. I'm going to say add new movie with the specified title. And then I'm going to redirect to index. So we have our test in place, and we have our movies. So I'm going to build and run again my scenario. And hopefully, unless something is missing, we should be able to add the title to the library and then go back to the index and see that the movie was added. So what we see is a full iteration that we were able to write what we wanted. We wrote a scenario, and this is what many times you call an integration test too, right? Because we're crossing all the layers from the view to the database, and you see that the case wasn't available, but we managed to add the movie. So we crossed all the layers, and we went from the view to the controller to our model, to our storage implementation, to our business rules, to the database, and we came back. And we have now a proof that this feature works. And how we model our controller and which methods were needed to create were driven by this feature. So that can be used to discover, as TDD is used to discover method. We will discover also with this feature what is needed to do. Before the questions, I just want to show you that when I run the app, the same thing happens. So I'm going to set up as a startup, and remember that we haven't run it once. I'm using the Cassini web server to launch the app and to see the to browse and to add, and then I'll close everything and clean up. So while we're launching, let me see one question. Where does the color coding come? From Gherkin. Yeah, SpecFlow actually adds that. Is an add-in to Visual Studio. So you will get that. Sometimes I use, there's an add-in for Notepad++, and I just open my files in there because sometimes I like it better. So we have here the media library, and I go to Add Media, and that's exactly what we did so far. to add media, if the browser will obey, we'll see the form and we'll be able to add a movie. So I just want to go back briefly to here are the resources I'm uploading. Everything was going to be on GitHub. You can get it and see the revisions and play with it. You can get it from the link here. So here's the book that I recommend. It's a very good book to read. It doesn't matter if you don't code in Rails. I think it was going to help you as a .NET developer too. Here's a list of resources with all the tools I used and more resources in there. Feel free to contact me anytime. You can drop me an email or just give me a shout on Twitter. And just because I guess it's the end of the demo, the web server doesn't want to work. So you already saw how this works automatically. It's the same idea. So thank you guys for being with me, and I hope that after this demo you will be more encouraged to apply BDD in your day-to-day. It's not hard. I know it's going to be a bit of a spike when you start, but as soon as you get used to the tools and as soon as you get used to the different ways of doing it, you'll find it right away.
This presentation was recorded at MVCConf. For more content like this, go to www.mvcconf.com.